All right, good morning, traders. Today is March 27, 2025. My name is John Carrigan. I moderate the BYOB Trading Room. Thank you for being here. Thank you, everybody out there in podcast land, digital land, cyber land, all of you people out there listening to us through YouTube subscriptions and on X and on Facebook. Thank you so much. Appreciate your subscriptions, the kind words. I'm inspired. I'm in awe. Thank you so much. Thank you for finding the value in my content. All right, let's get down to business. My SPY pivot this morning, 570.20. Above it, I'm a bull. Below it, I'm a bear. All of the Fab Five still in daily downtrends. All except Diamond Dow made lower highs and lower lows, closing below bullish traps, below falling 17 EMAs. SPY closed with a 2-hour downtrend, 10-minute uptrend. Diamond Dow made the outside day, closing over a bullish trap above the flat 17 EMA. Diamond Dow was the best performer yesterday. Gold and silver both in daily uptrends. Gold made a lower low and a lower high, closing over a bullish trap over the 17. USO in a daily uptrend made a higher low and a higher high, closing inside a bullish trap over the flat 17. Not sure if that's right. Silver made an outside day, closing over a bullish trap over the 17. Here we are again. USO made a higher high and a higher low, closing over a bullish trap over the 17. That is right. UNG made an inside day, closing below a bearish trap under the 17. US dollar index still in a downtrend. We love that. 104 closed near 104.64 area. SPY max pain for today, 570, with a put to call ratio of 1.1 puts to each call that expires today at 4:15. All right. Hey, good morning, Brad. Let's go take a look at some charts. All right. First chart. Let's take a look at SPY. All right. Let's take this out of here. And let's look at the 10-minute first. So we had a 10-minute uptrend coming into the close yesterday. All right, so probably going to look for a continuation of that 10-minute uptrend. I got to say, with that big bearish candle, I'm really looking forward to some follow through on that big red candle we had yesterday. So there's SPY on the 10-minute. Left off yesterday with a 10-minute uptrend. On the 2-hour, you can see the 3 EMA, all right, the yellow, underneath the white 8 EMA. So 2-hour got a 2-hour downtrend coming into the close. On the daily chart, okay, you had that doji top up here. I said be careful. We break below that tail of that doji. Probably going to be coming down to visit the 2025 anchored VWAP low, okay? This is the 2025 anchored VWAP low, starts on March 13th, right there. That's where it starts at, okay? You can see it's the pink line down here. So price action, lower high, lower low, closing below the bullish trap, below the falling 17 EMA. So there's SPY. On the game plan, let's take a peek at the game plan. All right, and let's zoom out. Let's just zoom out to the 15 right here. All right, okay, so today is, I like Friday options, so that's going to be either 1 day till expiration option or next Friday, 8 days till expiration option. All right, SPY on the 10-minute chart, if we have price, if we have a green erases red event, okay, or a 10-minute uptrend over VWAP, okay, I'm looking for the green erases red event is 573.80, so price over 573.80. So the sell-off right here from the midpoint all the way down to here, if all of that gets erased, that would be my bullish entry, my green erases red entry up there. Although if I get a 10-minute uptrend over VWAP, I will be likely to play that all the way back up there. We'll see what happens with that. So first bullish green erases red entry is price over 573.80. The pivot today is 570.20. And on the bearish downside, all right, if we have a 10-minute downtrend under VWAP, or we have a red erases green event underneath price 567.80. All right, truly, I think the price target is the the 2025 anchored VWAP low, which currently originates from March 13th over here. That's this purple line. All right, and it's currently sitting at 565.62. All right, let's take a look at the pre-market just for a second. Okay, so we can see in the pre-market they came down here to the area, never spiked it, never touched it. Are they coming back through only to trade underneath it? We'll see. That's a possibility. All right, we have a lower high so far. All right, are the bears going to be inspired enough to make the lower low? All right, we'll see what happens with that. So there's SPY on the 10-minute chart. All right, for the game plan. All right, let's go take a look at QQQ game plan. QQQ game plan right here, price action. Again, I like Friday options, 1 DTE and 8 DTE. All right, and I like price action. We have a green erases red event right up here over 489.70. Let's get that right, 489.70 right up there. And QQQ pivot 491.10. All right, and the bearish entry again is right under here. Red erases green underneath 583.50. All right, so there's the QQQ game plan. All right, let's take a look at QQQ on the scratch. All right, and we'll put it up on the daily chart. All right, you can see QQQ hit the all-time high anchored VWAP and was bouncing away. All right, price action, lower high, lower low, closing underneath a bullish trap underneath the falling 17 EMA. Price action, you can see up there, closing underneath the midpoint, underneath the falling all-time high anchored VWAP is in quadrant 3, not in the lower third, but definitely knocking on the door. So that makes this neutral at this time. Could break into bearish territory down here in the lower third. All right, we'll see what happens. There's QQQ. Let's take a peek at SPY. All right, SPY, lower high, lower low, closing underneath the all-time high anchored VWAP, of course, because we just tagged it and left it. All right, price action over the midpoint here, so just neutral, okay? Again, you go up, you give it up, that's neutral. You go down, you give it up, you're just neutral. So there's SPY. Let's take a look at IWM. All right, here's IWM, same candle. About everybody got the same candle except for Diamond Dow. Lower high, lower low, closing underneath, bullish trap underneath, falling 17 right here. Okay, underneath, all-time high anchored VWAP. That's the pink line above us up here. Okay, underneath the gold line, diagonal, that's the uptrend line. Underneath the midpoint, down here in quadrant 1, that's bearish on IWM. All right, let's take a look at FNGA. Price action, again, everybody got a lower high and a lower low. Closing below a bearish cross underneath here. All right, closing below all-time high anchored VWAP, that's the pink line. Closing below the midpoint, closing below the falling 17, closing under the trap, knocking on the door of the lower third. It's neutral, all right, right through here. You go up, you give it up, it's neutral. You go down, you give it up, it's neutral. All right, they get back in this lower third, they're knocking on the door as well. All right, then we've got a bearish situation. All right, let's take a look at Diamond Dow. Of course, they were the best performer yesterday, for the bulls anyways. Outside day, higher high, lower low, closing inside a bullish trap, all right, over the flat 17 EMA. Still caught underneath the uptrend line right there, the goal line, underneath the all-time high anchored VWAP, that's the pink line, over right here, over the dash line right here. Okay, so just neutral. Okay, you go up, you give it up, it's neutral. You go down, you give it up, it's neutral. Okay, all of the Fab Five experiencing pullbacks and daily downtrends. Okay, you got price action making a low, and you're having a pullback in their daily downtrend. They very well likely could go down and double bottom, kind of test that low. I'm expecting that to happen for some of them, to make sure that that's the double low, and then maybe start consolidating and moving their way back up. We'll see what happens. Currently, we're in pullbacks in daily downtrends. All right, so there's Diamond Dows. Look at our technicals. All right, you can see from the day before, all right, we had, see yesterday or the day before, the 25th, little micro higher lows and higher and lower highs, okay? Wound up closing the day before in the buyer's chop zone. Well, we opened up, all right, yesterday, right inside the buy zone. I guess the bears didn't actually, we kind of pierced the overbought zone for a micro minute. All right, right up here on the 15-minute T2122. All right, and the bears threw us out of there. We wound up in the buy zone, kind of floundered around in there for about 10 minutes, and then it looks like the bears threw us out of there too. And from there, we made a continuation pretty much of this 15-minute downtrend, making little micro lower highs and lower lows, only to find ourselves back here at the midpoint, and we got thrown out of the buyer's chop zone, and you can see we wound up camping out the rest of the day, afternoon, inside the seller's chop zone. All right, so there's T2122. All right, on the 15-minute, little micro higher, lower highs and lower lows, we just kind of melted all the way into the seller's chop zone. All right, let's take a look at T2123. This is the 15-minute chart. You can see we gapped up, all right, and we were green right here because we gapped up, but all in all, selling commenced after about the first 10 minutes, and you can see we the bears took over and pushed us all the way back into the hooking 200 SMA. So the question is, on all these red candles, are we going to see follow through today? That's what I'm looking for. Or is it going to be a pause day? All right, and maybe the follow through comes through tomorrow. We'll see what happens. All right, so there's T2123. All right, you can see price action finding a home here on the backside of the, well, on the top side of the hooking 200 SMA. All right, you can see selling started out right after the first 10 minutes. You can see they got all the way up there, and they just, you can see the bears filled the gap. Say we had a bullish gap up, all right, and the bears filled it. That's a clue, all right. Bears are still in control up here, all right. Here we got a bullish gap the day before, and the bears filled it. Okay, so we're probably in a thick area of bearish territory. All right, there's probably more bears in this forest than we care to believe. All right, so that's T2123. All right, let's take a look at the bigger picture here. If you look at it, all right, you got a big hockey stick. All right, here's the handle, there's the neck, and then there's the hockey blade right there. All right, the stick blade just goes flat across. Again, what type of price action are we getting here? All right, it's definitely not a move up and hold the higher ground. It's a move down and hold the lower ground, which typically transitions, if they hang out here too long, into another move down. All right, so just saying that, notice we're not getting the V-bottom bounce that we got last month or a few months ago. See the V-bottom bounce right there. Okay, we're not getting that. We're coming out and we're hanging out down here, kind of indicating they're not done selling, and we may get another push down. We'll see what happens. There's T2123 on the 15-minute chart. All right, and let's go take a look at the 3-bar chart. All right, if you zoom way out, you can definitely see the hockey stick. No bounce, no V bottom, nothing bullish happening here, other than on the smaller time frame we see a little bit of consolidation over prior consolidation. It is starting to rise a little bit, but it's definitely not the V bottom that we look forward to when price hits support area. All right, notice we broke through this support, this low. All right, so maybe this is it. We'll see. All right, price action. All right, you can see this is the all-time high up here. All right, and the bears pushed us down, the bulls pushed us up, but guess what? We made a lower high, and then from that lower high, you see the bears were inspired to push us down and make a lower low. All right, so how do we recover from here? It's going to be just like you eat an elephant, a little bite at a time. We'll see what happens. Okay, you can see price action caught underneath. This is a prior all-time high. This is a prior all-time high, and this is the all-time high. Again, we're caught underneath this fading 200 SMA up here. All right, price action yesterday. Okay, from the 3-bar perspective, got one green candle. In other words, there's your gap up, and 2 red. All right, so 1 green price bar, 2 red price bar. Okay, it's not a good ratio for the bulls to have the bears printing 2 for 1 every time they go to work. All right, so there's T2123. Let's take a peek at FNGA. All right, you can see FNGA is moving down and consolidating in the lower ground. Okay, that's a bear flag. Typically for bear flags, like I just mentioned earlier, okay, price moves down, consolidates. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, but on the reverse side. And then another move down. So we'll see what happens with FNGA. You can see they got caught underneath and closed underneath the 200 SMA. Okay, if they can't make a stand here, I don't know where they're going to make a stand. All right, I could probably foresee price action maybe breaking this downtrend line right through here and maybe coming down to check out these lows. All right, so there's FNGA. You can see the red dots, all right, selling from the beginning of the day. Got a bearish gap down, all right, and then the bears took over. So selling from the beginning of the day to the end of the day, and then some right here. All right, so that's FNGA on the 15-minute. And we watch the FNGA because that's 10 of the most heavily weighted securities in the SPY and the QQQ, which are the 2 main indexes that we like to trade. All right, so we keep an eye on this. This is pretty much the leash that jerks the dog around. All right, let's go take a look at XLE. All right, and start off on this one right here. We'll hit it up on the scratch, and we want XLE. And we want it on the daily chart. Okay, so here we are, XLE. High flyer here, okay. I said look out for the sword candle. They went off and put in another fat sword candle, kind of looking like higher low, higher high, closing over a bullish trap. That's bullish. Closing over a rising 17. See the green dots. Closing over downtrend line 1. Closing over downtrend line 2, closing over 12-month high anchored VWAP here, okay, in the upper third, making higher highs, all right, that's bullish, all right, up there in the upper third, that's bullish, all right, XLE looking good, all right, you can see the secret trade price moves up, you hold for 3 to 5 days and you're rewarded with a breakout. Okay, price moves up, hold 3 to 5 days, boom, breakout. Price moves up, hold 3 to 5 days, especially when it's over a 12-month high anchored VWAP or an all-time high anchored VWAP. Hold 3 to 5 days, and guess what? You got rewarded again, right there. All right, little trade secret right there. XLE. All right, let's take a look at UNG. All right, UNG. Let's try it again. UNG. All right, price action for UNG, inside day, lower high, higher low, closing under a bearish trap, under the 17. No longer in the upper third, just neutral right here, breaking the pivot low. Actually now in a downtrend after breaking this pivot low right here. So UNG in a downtrend, pulling back to the uptrend line right here. Still up over the 12-month high anchored VWAP, over the uptrend line. It's just neutral. It moves up and it gives it up, so that's just neutral. So there's UNG on the daily chart. USO. USO, this is probably what's moving the XLE. Higher low, higher high. Now there's another sword candle. All right, closing over a bullish trap, over the 17, over the uptrend line, over, that's a 3-year high anchored VWAP. See, that's the post-COVID high, 3-year high anchored VWAP. Look at that. We've been bull flagging ever since that COVID low right here. Bull flagging right there. All right, next move should be up. All right, after all of this 3 years of consolidation. Over a 3-year high anchored VWAP. Again, you move up, you give it up, you're neutral. Same thing on the bottom side. You move down and you give it up, you're neutral. All right, so let's see if they can hold the higher ground here. So there's USO on the daily chart. Just neutral, all right? Acting very bullish, though. Looking good. Got a tail candle yesterday. Sword candle. Pointed up, all right? So good chance that may be a place for a rest from here. We'll see. Like to see them hold the higher ground. There's USO. Let's take a look at precious metals, GLD. All right, high flyer here. Let's look at that. See the quad lines? All right. Price action. All right, lower high, lower low, closing inside the bullish trap over the rising 17. That's the green dots. Okay. Under the all-time high anchored VWAP. That's the pink line. Way up at the top of quadrant 4, that's bullish up there. See all that green? That's bullish way up there. Consolidating, maybe a breakout in a couple days. I would let it cool off for maybe another 3 or 4 days. We'll see. They might be ready to pop pretty soon. We'll see. There's GLD on the daily chart. All right, let's take a look at SLV. SLV in an uptrend. Price action, making higher lows and higher highs. Here's a low, made a higher low, and there's a higher high. Price action for yesterday, looking like an outside day right there. Closing over bullish cross, over rising 17, over, this is a 12-year high anchored VWAP right here. All right, 12-year high anchored VWAP. Up here in quadrant 4, again, over the trap, over the rising 17, over the 12-year high anchored VWAP up in quadrant 4. That's bullish up there, SLV, on the daily chart. All right, let's look at a few sectors. SMH, all right, SMH, lower high, lower low, closing. This is bearish, okay, closing down here in the lower third. All right, closing under a trap, under the 17, under the all-time high anchored VWAP, under the midpoint, in the lower third. That's bearish for SMH. Now we look at the cousin, XLK, cousin to SMH. Is technology sector right here. Lower high, lower low, closing below the trap, below the falling 17, below the uptrend line, below the all-time high anchored VWAP, not in the lower third, so this is going to be just neutral right here. Let's take a look at XLF. High flyer here, look at this. Price action, higher low, higher high, closing over bullish trap, over hooking 17, over all-time high anchored VWAP. Again, all right, here's the secret pattern. I'm going to show it. Okay, you move up, hold for 3 to 5 days. Guess what? You got rewarded with a breakout to the upside. Again, over that all-time high anchored VWAP. Okay? I'm telling you, that works. All right, XLF on the daily chart. All right, you can see up here in quadrant 4, that's bullish. All right, hanging out up here over the all-time high anchored VWAP. That's bullish up there, XLF. All right, let's take a look at IYT. Here's our transports, lower high, lower low, closing. I can't see too well. Inside a bullish trap, under the falling 17, under the uptrend line, under the pink line, that's the all-time high anchored VWAP, under the midpoint, okay, not in the lower third. I'm going to give it to them, all right, but definitely knocking on the door. IYT transports just neutral right here. Again, you move up, you give it up, that's neutral. You give it up and more, that's bearish. All right, you go down, you give it up. All right, that's just neutral. All right, you give it up and more, that will be bullish. All right, currently just neutral, not in the lower third, not in the upper third, so just neutral here. So there's IYT. All right, let's go take a look at our economic package before the internet fails. All right, maybe we can get to it before the internet fails this time. This will be new. All right, price action for the dollar in a downtrend, making lower highs and lower lows, lower highs, lower lows. It's a downtrend, kind of holding up here on major support. Like to see us break the major support right here. Okay, at 103.41. Having a tough time with it. It isn't a bear flag, so we'll see what they're going to do. So price action closed yesterday at 104.64 area. All right, let's see, they broke through the minor support. That's this peak, and this peak. So they broke through minor support. Like to see them break through some major support right here and come check out this breakup candle low. We'll see what happens. They're currently in a downtrend, and we like that. On the economic calendar, all right, the main event this week is today at 8:30. GDP comes out, all right? So you follow the dollar, all right? We like the weak dollar because it makes our goods and services cheaper for foreign countries to purchase them. So that makes us more competitive in the global market, okay? So now we're going to go look today at GDP, what we did in the global market, all right? Did we get 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%? We're going to find out, okay? So GDP comes out at 8:30, all right? That's a good forecast, or it's actually on past data, but it's a good idea. We look at the data to see, are we moving up or are we moving down, all right? So there's GDP comes out at 8:30 today. A lot of things come out at 8:30, a lot of data. All right, international trading goods, 8:30. Jobless claims, 8:30. Corporate profits, 8:30. Retail inventories, 8:30. Wholesale inventories, 8:30. Pending home sales, 10 o'clock. Gas report at 10:30. Tomorrow, all right, personal income and outlays, 8:30. Consumer sentiment, 10. A rig count at 1. All right, so main event comes out in about 1 minute. Thank you, Alan, for sharing that. Appreciate that. All right, I'm pretty sure he's going to share it. I'm going to tell him right now, thanks for sharing it. All right, let's hit earnings calendar. I'm going to go through each day. Here's Thursday. Okay, some familiar names, but nothing that's going to move the markets. All right, Lululemon, you've heard of them. All right. Just not big enough market cap to move the indices, and those are the ones we trade. Walgreens Boots, all right, again, another familiar name, just not big enough to have a big effect on the indexes. Friday, same deal, all right? Same deal, all right? And Monday, again, familiar names, but nothing big enough to move the markets, all right? So, oh my gosh, we got it done before the internet crashed this morning. Lately, the internet has been failing us, and my video gets messed up right about this time right here. So, all right, traders, that's it for me. All right, we'll kick off the markets in about 45 minutes. Let me get my video out there so everybody can see it. All right, I'll see you guys in 45 minutes. I feel like I'm missing something, or did I just run through this fast today? All right, if you got some questions, gold going to break out? Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. All right, we'll see it on the 10-minute chart, obviously. All right, so I'm going to take a 45-minute break. All right, we'll read some data, and we'll reconvene here at 9:15. All right, thank you, everybody out there in digital land. I will see you maybe this afternoon, maybe later this afternoon. All right, we'll see.